Farnsworth. He is the Vice President for the Americas Society and the Council of the Americas, organization which promotes dialogue and trade across the continent. Thank you so much for joining us, Eric. Let's talk about Venezuela, which has seen a prolonged economic crisis. We're talking triple-digit inflation, an exodus of millions of migrants looking for better jobs outside of the country. Can you give us a sense of the economic temperature right now in the country and what that is like for Venezuelans there?
Hi, Isabel. It's great to join you and your viewers. I mean, the technical word is Venezuela is an economic basket case. And you're absolutely right. This has been a country that since the deterioration of oil prices back in 2012, 2013, has really been on the back foot economically. And it's just been incredibly mismanaged by first Hugo Chavez and now Nicolas Maduro for years and years. They have taken over the private sector. Gross corruption has stolen billions of dollars of proceeds from oil and other minerals and mined products that should be the property of the people. And the economy has just really been run essentially as a private plaything of the government in power. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, over a quarter of the population of Venezuela has left the country, over 8 million people. It's an astounding figure. Many of those folks have come to the United States, but even more have come to neighboring countries like Colombia and Brazil. So the question is, do they improve anytime soon? And I think the short answer is probably not. There's no particular reason why the economic circumstances would turn around anytime soon in Venezuela, particularly with the same leaders in place who have now doubled down on the process that they're looking to continue.
Well, how you put eloquently into a minute, how in the world such a once prosperous country has gotten to this point. Well done. Well, the Biden administration turned up at least some pressure on this authoritarian regime with new measures like raising the reward for information leading to the arrest of Maduro and his closest allies. Eric, do these sort of sanctions work? And when Trump takes the office here in 10 days, what dynamics should his team keep in mind when it comes to sanctions policy?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a critical question. So I guess the real point is, what's the definition of work? If it's to maintain pressure, to highlight the rejection of the regime, to bring inconvenience and make their lives difficult, then I think sanctions can work in the context of what the Biden administration has done. And they've really focused primarily on individual sanctions. In additional 8 or 9 were placed today on individuals, and some continued rhetoric, et cetera, et cetera. But the real sanctions are clearly sectoral. And that's clearly on the energy side. And I think the Trump administration coming in will have to decide what it does with on that aspect. But there is also a real opportunity here to work with other countries, for example, Canada, Argentina, countries in Europe, who can work together on the sanctions regime so that it's not just one country putting sanctions, or that the sanctions are disjointed, but rather that they're much more coordinated in a way that will lead to ultimately the regime deciding that the cost of staying in office is really just more than it's willing to bear. But I think until you get to that point, yeah, the sanctions, people will say they're ineffective, they don't work. Well, yeah, Maduro's still here. He just reinstalled himself today for a third term, but their lives have not been made any easier by sanctions. And I think that's going to be the question going forward.
Yeah. Well, major U.S. oil company Chevron, its license to operate in Venezuela remains in place. Is this something that President-elect Trump should look at or would look at, considering we would think of him as a president to remove restrictions on businesses, not exactly impose them?
Well, I think certainly sectoral sanctions are something that the administration will take a look at, but they're going to have to take a deep breath. They're not even in office yet. The inauguration of Donald Trump will be January 20th. And so once the administration is in place, they'll have to have hearings for the cabinet. Of course, Marco Rubio has been nominated, but he's going to have Senate confirmation. And so, then there will be a review process going forward. And I think the question I would have is, can things be done in the interim, working with allies and friends, and trying to find ways to really continue the rejection of the Maduro regime as it continues to reject all the norms of international governance and really harden its approach even to its own citizens.
And we'll also see what sort of interests President Trump takes in Venezuela as well. Eric Farnsworth, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.